Well, I think that some mistakes were made initially in that investigation. First of all, I was very critical of the fact that someone very up high made a decision not to arrest O.J. Simpson when they had a warrant in their hands. They waited until the next day to serve the warrant. Actually, they said they would allow the attorney to bring O.J. Simpson in. That is not and has never been the policy of the Los Angeles Police Department. Again, somebody got stars in their eyes and thought this was the way to go. The result, of course, was the fact that O.J. Simpson left, and everyone knows the story now, going down the freeway with the Bronco, with all the police following him. And that put police officers in tremendous jeopardy, because you could imagine what would have happened if O.J. stepped out with a gun and pointed it at the officers. So they would have had to probably shoot him. If he had shot himself, that would be a tragedy. So the officers were left in a very no-win situation. So that decision that was made, again, not by detectives, not by police officers, but by some of the brass, was a poor decision, and I think a decision that led to one of the great media events of our time. Mark Furman came on the department long after I did. I was an assistant chief when Mark Furman came on the department. I knew Mark Furman, just happened to know him among the many detectives that we had. Very fine detective, a very good homicide detective, a very aggressive detective, and I think has been treated very badly. I think Detective Furman did a remarkable job when he was on the witness stand. I had the opportunity to give him a few pointers, and some people that I knew also gave him pointers. I don't know that he needed those pointers, but you have to understand he was under tremendous pressure. And so it was important for him to at least get the support that I could provide to him and that others could provide to him, so that he'd get up there and tell his story and not be berated by the defense. The principal pointers that we gave to Mark Furman was to continually remind himself that he had a story to tell, that he was there to tell nothing but the truth, those things that had happened, and to be proud of the things that he did, and not allow the defense to get to him, not allow him to, because he was going to be accused of all kinds of things, the racial bias, and he had to keep his cool. The main thing was to keep his cool and to remind himself that his job is simply to give the facts, ma'am, whatever those facts might be. The state has charged O.J. with murder, and they have, in my judgment, very, very good evidence to support that charge. If you just stop and think about it for a moment, we have all of the DNA evidence that everyone's talking about, and a few years ago we didn't have DNA. We simply had serology, we had blood types. Think about it. You have O.J.'s wife is killed. You find his blood type at the scene. You find her blood type on some socks in his house. You see a blood trail. His blood type, her blood type. You have blood in the Bronco. How many times do you have blood in your car, particularly on the night that your wife is murdered? I think if you put all of those facts together, pretty clear that he indeed is the one responsible for those two murders. Whether or not he will be convicted depends on whether or not these defense attorneys are able to cloud the minds of reasonable people, whether or not they are able to take away from what we believe to be reasonable people their common sense. If the jurors apply common sense and apply that common sense to the facts as being presented by both the defense and the prosecution, I think a conviction is possible. But reasonable doubt certainly can be placed, and it might occur. Use of force is a subject that everyone thinks they know everything about, and they don't. The law says you can use that force which is reasonable and necessary. Only that force which is reasonable and necessary, and you fit that reasonableness and that necessary element into the situation that you're dealing with. This calls for good judgment, and it also sets in motion a situation where the police officer who is wrestling around in the gutter with some guy that may be stronger than him, and it maybe is losing the battle, his force and his belief that the force that he's using is very reasonable and very necessary, but somebody observing from the outside may say, oh, he used too much force. So it's a very difficult issue, not clearly defined, but again, that force which is reasonable and necessary. Los Angeles Police Department had in force, I think, a good policy in the use of force. One of the problems has been, and one of the things that I objected to a long, long time ago, was using the baton, the police baton, the PR-24, in the escalation of force, using it at a position which I thought was much lower than was necessary. And I think that's one of the problems that we faced in the Rodney King situation. The officers were, because of a decision made, a political decision made by the Board of Police Commissioners and the City Council, were to use that kind of force. That's how they were trained. And it came out very bad on the videotape. It looked much more brutal than it was. And what I'm referring to, before this, we had a policy that allowed our officers to tie up with the suspect, to take him into custody by using what we called upper body control holds. Those were eliminated several years ago, and the baton was placed in the position of being where the upper body control holds were used. Think about it. We give our military all kinds of sophisticated weapons to keep the international peace. We give a police officer a prehistoric weapon, a club, if you will, to maintain the peace. Seems to me it's time we put our collective knowledge, our technology together and give the police some kind of adequate tool to deal with these acts of violence that they're faced with. Race was raised in the Rodney King incident time and time again, but it was raised by those who simply wanted to raise the race issue. A lot of politicians in Los Angeles, a lot of community activists wanted to interject race into that incident. It was not a part of that incident at all. And I think the best evidence of that was the fact that there were two others in that car with Rodney King. Both were black. Both were handled very, very quickly and very easily. No force was used because they responded to the commands of the officers, and they took them into custody with no problem whatsoever. And so there's nothing racial involved in this incident except that which was interjected into it by the politicians and by community activists. Well, unfortunately, the Rodney King incident became a media event almost immediately. If you think back, we were all going home at night looking at the Gulf War. That was a war we saw in living, breathing television in our living rooms every night. We were so anxious to see what the next episode was going to be. And suddenly the Gulf War was over, and we had nothing to see except for the fact that Rodney King occurred. And so the electronic media made a very, very big issue of it. They broadcast that over and over and over and over again. And then the print media had to catch up. And so the print media, in their own inimitable style, did their best to catch up. And they did all of these side pieces and side issues regarding the Los Angeles Police Department. And as a result, you had a terrible media event that almost destroyed a police department and ultimately almost destroyed a city. Well, I was there the first night of both riots, the one in 1965 and the one in 1992. And quite frankly, the one in 1965 was much more difficult, in my judgment, to deal with than the one in 1992. The riot in 1965 had people shooting at the police far more often than you found in 1992. Fires were set in a large 54 square mile area, and while there were many fires set in the 1992 riot, they were much more confined to a city area. In my judgment, had LAPD responded the way it ought to have responded, we could have put that riot down in 1992 much more quickly. Actually, even though a videotape showed one intersection, and people need to remember that that one intersection, which was videotaped like the Rodney King and then broadcast throughout the world, that was only one intersection. And while the police did not respond as they should have at that particular intersection, there were literally hundreds of other intersections where the police were responding well. The 1992 riots were over and done with in about 48 hours, about 50 at the most. The Watts riots took 5 days to quell. And once again, I was there in both of them, and 1992 riots I thought were far less of a problem than the 1965 riots. Well, a lot of discussion about my retirement after this incident, and quite frankly, one of the reasons that I stayed as long as I did was to simply tell everyone out there that, hey, I'm not about to run. If you notice, there's an awful lot of people, bureaucrats, politicians, who at the first sign of danger, they run. I didn't believe that was the appropriate thing to do. I believed it was important to stay there, to stand by my people, stand by the Los Angeles Police Department, and to, wherever I could, let people know this was one incident that did not demand the kind of attention that it got. It was a serious incident, but we'd had serious incidents before. We had taken care of those incidents in a way that would have been much more disciplined than the way that this one was handled. As I said, it almost destroyed a police department, almost destroyed a city. And when I believed that my stay was going to be harmful for the police department any longer, I left. That was, I might point out, 13 years after I had full retirement. In other words, 13 years before that, I could have retired with full retirement. I saved the city about a little over $1 million by not retiring in that period of time.